Hello and welcome to Americans Learn. My name is Lauren, and today I'm going to delve into the philosophy side of things. Today I'm going to look at a Biographics video about Voltaire. Now, the only thing I really remember about Voltaire is that when I was in history class, Voltaire was the winner of the philosopher Mr. Wagner would most like to punch in the teeth award. I don't remember why, but my teacher did not like him. So I'm kind of fun. I think this will be fun. I'm curious to get my memories of why Voltaire was so annoying to my teacher. I'm glad to get those back. So yeah, if you want to see more stuff like this, more about people, just, let me know in the comments below. Make sure you give this video a like. Let me know who you'd like me to react to. Let me know if there's a specific person you want me to look into. I'm excited to learn about Voltaire today, so that's what we're gonna do. And now, let's go. Voltaire, the best of all possible worlds.
The life of Voltaire was one of extremes in all things. Born weak and sickly to the point he was not expected to survive more than a few days, yet he lived to the age of 84. During that extended lifetime, he knew the inside of royal courts and French prisons. Parisian at birth, he spent much of his life exiled from that city. Once a close companion of the Crown Prince of Prussia, he was banished from Prussia when his former friend became King of Prussia, known to posterity as Frederick the Great. He often disavowed his own writing and used known 178 different pseudonyms for his work, as well as publishing his earliest efforts using his birth name, François-Marie Arouet. He ridiculed the debauched lifestyles of the nobility he patronized, yet engaged in considerable debauchery himself. Despite, or maybe because of, a Jesuit education, he satirized what he perceived as the hypocrisy of Christianity, especially that of the Catholic Church. Sales of his many works made him fabulously wealthy, a wealth enhanced by shrewd investments. He became a leading figure of the historical period known as the Age of Enlightenment. The historian Will Durant called the same time period the Age of Voltaire in Volume 9 of the epic historical work The Story of Civilization.
I like that on the picture that they have chosen. It's where it says the Age of Voltaire. The V is not there. So it just says the Age of Voltaire.
Voltaire, in his plays, poems, essays, novellas, and scientific papers, argued against slavery, criticized organized religions, and questioned the legitimacy of absolute monarchies. He used history, science, nature, and humanity itself to argue for the existence of a supreme being, though he strongly opposed organized religion. Most of his life...
See, I'm curious now. It's like some of this stuff sounds pretty good to me, so I'm like, where's the catch? I don't remember, again, if my teacher had a good reason for not liking this guy, but I'm like, he usually had good reasons for stuff, so I'm looking for the catch here. I will say, though, I think it was Voltaire who said, I may not agree with what you're saying, but I will fight to the death your right to say it, and I do agree with that. Free speech, it's important, tenet of our land here, so I'm curious to see where it goes from here.
Life included a battle for free speech. He wrote to kings and princes, suggested actions which affected nations such as Frederick the Great, who was then considering war in Europe. Quote, while loving glory so much, how can you persist in a plan which will cause you to lose it? Yet, he also wrote to the common people, quote, the husband who decides to surprise his wife is often very much surprised himself.
Do they mean surprise in what way does he mean surprise? Just here's a flower, or I feel like there is an alternate meaning to surprise. He was surprised. She was I feel like that means something different in certain contexts. It's not a good thing always. Again, I don't really remember, and that's old timey novels, and I never really got into those. I do know that I feel like I've read it though somewhere where it was to be surprised was not, it didn't just mean oh my god, it meant something else,
Christianity, he opined, ours is assuredly the most ridiculous, the most absurd, and the most bloody religion which has ever infected this world. Yet he was equally dismissive of Islam and Judaism. Over the course of his long life, his views changed, yet he remained unadulteratedly opposed to the dogmas of religious authorities, writing to Frederick the Great, anyone who has the power to make you believe absurdities has the power to make you commit injustices.
Ooh, I like
Though he
that.
opposed absolute power of government, he was equally suspicious of democracy, calling it the idiocy of the masses. Impossible
Okay.
to sum up, his life was one constant questioning of authority, of nature, of his fellow man, and of morality. His war
I can see that. Maybe I can kind of see why someone would be annoyed by this guy. It's like, could you choose a position, please? Like, you can't just hate everything equally. Like, choose something. Like, stand up for something, would you please? Okay, if that's the reason, I can kind of see that.
was a life of extremes indeed.
All right. I love that I couldn't even get through like 2 minutes without stopping it like 4 times. My motto is to the point.
Francois-Marie Arouet was baptized in Paris in November 1694, the son of an affluent lawyer and court functionary who by marriage held minor privileges in the hierarchy of French nobility. Voltaire later disputed that the man who gave him his name was his actual father, claiming to have been born in February 1694 as the illegitimate son of another nobleman. Sickly and slight as a child, he displayed a quick mind and an eagerness to learn. His formal education began at the age of 10 when he entered the Jesuit college Louis le Grand, situated on the left bank of the Seine in Paris. He later praised his education highly, writing of the priests, quote, "They inspired in me a taste for literature and sentiments which will be consolation to me to the end of my life. I had the good fortune to be formed by more than one Jesuit, all their hours divided between the care they took of us and the exercises of their austere profession." Voltaire left the college after graduating at the age of 17, desirous of making his career as a writer. His father intervened, insisting his son prepare for a career in the law. The young man resented his father's implication that a career in literature was a guarantee of destitution, though he accepted, at least on the face of it, his filial duties for the next 3 years. He joined with other minor nobles and abbés, a title similar to father, though not necessarily an ordained priest, and enjoying the opportunities for revels during the Paris evenings.
I do love that like the parents telling their kids that like the arts are means that they're going to be poor, like goes way back. Parents have always been telling kids that a career in the arts means you're going to be poor. I like that. That's kind of funny.
Of his legal studies, he expressed his displeasure, writing of the profusion of useless things with which they wished to load my brain. He professed his motto at the time being to the point. In 1713, his father obtained for the son an appointment with the ambassador at The Hague as an assistant. There, the young Voltaire again found the attractions of nightlife more appealing than legal work and started a relationship with Olympe Donoyer, who he called Pimpette, and to whom he wrote, "Never was there a person better worthy of love than you."
Aww.
His employer notified the father of his waywardness, and Francois-Marie was ordered to return to Paris, threatened with disinheritance if he did not address himself fully to the study and practice of law. When Pimpette rejected his advances, Francois-Marie decided to accept his father's judgment.
Okay. You know what? I'll give him that. Like, he was like, he loved this lady. She didn't like him back. And so he's like, all right, guess I'll go be a lawyer. Bye. I'll give him props for that. That's pretty good. I do think that the employer needs to like butt out.
The French king, Louis XIV, died in September 1715, leaving as his heir his great-grandson, Louis XV, at the time all of 5 years old. A regency was called for to save the monarchy, and court intrigues and maneuvering among factions desirous of controlling the boy king created division in the French government. Philippe, Duc d'Orléans, and the king's uncle became regents supported by allies among the nobility and the clergy. Louis XIV had distrusted Philippe, referring to him as a fanfaron de crime, or one who bragged about his crimes. Francois-Marie was...
I wonder who that sounds like. Can't imagine. I can't imagine. You know, it's at the tip of my, I can't imagine someone who brags. Who's this? Who's this now? I don't know. I can't even imagine. Can't even come up with a name.
Giving lip service to the practice of law, had already begun to write both poetry and plays. He also enjoyed the salons and entertainments of the nobility, where his wit and often wicked sense of humor made him popular. He described himself as thin, long, and fleshless, and enjoyed the freely flowing wine at the salons, regaling other guests with his poetry, liberally laced with heresies and barely concealed innuendo directed at some of the more powerful nobles in the regency. One such poem, described as very satirical and very impudent by a contemporary, the Duc de Saint-Simon, led to the young Arouet's first exile. In 1716, he was evicted from Paris to Tours. His father intervened with the target of the verses, the Duc d'Orléans, persuading him that the exile be made to Sully-sur-Loire, still an embarrassment, but considerably closer to Paris. While there, Arouet denied that he had written the offending verses and begged to be released from what was, in effect, house arrest. By the end of the year, his request was granted, and he was back in Paris once again, titillating the salons and their patrons with his irreverence and his often bawdy verses, which only thinly veiled their references to the regions, the Duc d'Orléans. In early 1717, a group of verses...
And if he's getting, exiled for writing silly satire and poetry, I can see why he would be a proponent of free speech. I can get that. Considering his background.
Appeared. Arouet denied their authorship, which included a line which translated read, "A boy reigning, a man notorious for poisoning and incest ruling."
Ooh.
The boy referred to a young Louis XIV, the man, the regent Philippe, Duc d'Orléans. It had long been rumoured that the Duke's late first wife had died of poisoning. There were also rumours of his being in an incestuous relationship with his daughter, though these were never confirmed. The regent responded to the verses by issuing a secret arrest warrant, and François-Marie Arouet found himself sent to the Bastille in Paris without benefit of a trial. His first incarceration in the prison began in May 1717.
Interesting. Ooh. I mean, that does seem like the
no
guy
longer
did it,
needing to make the appearance.
If he has to send someone secretly to prison for saying things that are possibly about him, that, room for question, that's just suspicious to me. Okay, I'm gonna go longer than a minute without pausing, sorry.
Of practicing law while in the Bastille, Arouet took to writing to pass the weeks of imprisonment. Denied paper but allowed books, he wrote between the lines of the latter. One of the books he was allowed at his own expense was Homer's Iliad. Arouet began an epic poem of his own based on Henry IV of France, which he titled La Henriade. He also worked on his play Oedipe, already scheduled to be staged by the Comédie Française in Paris in 1718. Cool. During his imprisonment, he began to sign his name as M. Arouet de Voltaire. He also used the name to sign letters that he dispatched to the Regency, begging forgiveness and release. It was in that name that his release was granted. It was not long before the Arouet portion of the name was dropped, and he became known across Europe simply as Voltaire. He was allowed to return to Paris in October 1718 in time to oversee the production of Oedipe, a play which included the theme of incest. With characteristic cheek, Voltaire asked the regent if he could dedicate the new play to him. The Duc d'Orléans refused, though he allowed a dedication to his mother to be read at the premiere. The play was an immediate sensation in Paris, playing for 45 performances, an unheard-of record at the time. Okay. When the regent had the production moved to his palace for a command performance, Voltaire was summoned to attend as an honoured guest. While Paris gossip linked the incest within the play to the rumoured incest within the Regency, its author enjoyed the plaudits of the man ruling France. The success of the play, of his Henriade and other works and essays brought Voltaire financial rewards, critical acclaim, and a notoriety that he cheerfully exploited. He was wealthy, influential, and popular, yet his fame had created enemies, and his legal difficulties were not yet over. In 1726, Voltaire attended a performance at the Comédie Française, where he encountered the Chevalier de Rohan, who made a sneering comment regarding the writer's adopted name. Voltaire retorted with a comment of his own. While sources disagree on the writer's exact words, the gist of his retort was that his name was being elevated to glory, while Rohan would bring his own infamy. Rohan was not about to let the insult stand. He sent several of his hirelings to assault Voltaire. When the enraged writer responded by publicly challenging Rohan to a duel, which was illegal, the Chevalier used his influence to obtain a lettre de cachet, sending Voltaire to the Bastille yet again. Voltaire, who by then had considerable influence in the royal court, himself asked for a voluntary exile in England rather than another lengthy incarceration, and it was granted. After 2 weeks in the Bastille, the writer was escorted to Calais, where he embarked on a ship for England, arriving there in May 1726. In England, Voltaire was welcomed and entertained by luminaries including the British satirist Jonathan Swift, the dramatist William Congreve, and the poet Alexander Pope. He debated with political leaders, aligned himself with Sir Robert Walpole and the Liberal Whig Party, and attended productions of Shakespeare's plays, then little known in France. In an essay written during his British exile, Voltaire wrote that the leading British thinkers, quote, would have been persecuted in France, imprisoned at Rome, and burned at London. Voltaire observed that human reason was a native of England in present age at least. In all his observations and conversations, his correspondence and his essays, Voltaire came to recognize the superiority of a constitutional monarchy rather than an absolute monarchy or a democracy as a form of government. He also came to appreciate the religious tolerance then enjoyed in Britain, at least in comparison to the intolerance prevalent in France. He prepared an English edition of his Henriade, presenting a copy to the Queen, and sold others on subscription. He also began work on his Letters philosophiques sur l'anglais, philosophical letters on the English. In them he expressed admiration for the British government, the monarchy, their religious tolerance, and their industry, economy, markets, and general society.
Very clever. Get the English on your side. It's like you get, he still has his supporters back in France, but now he's getting some people up in English. I like that. That's clever. It's big brain thinking.
The 24 letters, or essays, contained numerous examples of Voltaire's biting wit. In the fifth letter, which favourably compared the Church of England to Roman Catholicism for the most part, Voltaire was nonetheless disapproving of some of the actions of the clergy. To quote, "The English clergy have retained a great number of the Romish ceremonies," he wrote, "and especially that of receiving, with a most scrupulous attention, of their tithes." He was especially scathing on Presbyterianism and what he perceived as its hypocrisy, noting that entertainments from theatre to playing cards were banned on the Sabbath, except that a person of quality and those we call genteel play on that day. The rest of the nation go either to church, to the tavern, or to see their mistresses. In 1728, Voltaire was permitted to return to Paris, where he published and produced several plays, including some imitations of the works of Shakespeare. They were met with limited praise, though another play, Zère, 1732, was a rousing success. His philosophical letters on the English were published in Rouen, and Voltaire found himself once again in trouble with the authorities.
Of course he did.
They found critical comparisons with the British unpalatable. Forced to flee Paris to avoid jail or worse, Voltaire sought refuge with his new mistress, the Marquise de Châtelet, at Cirey, near the border with Lorraine. Joining them at her chateau was the Marquis's obviously open-minded husband, the Marquis de Châtelet.
Nice.
To assuage whatever husbandly outrage the Marquis may have harbored, Voltaire's deep pockets paid for restoration of the chateau. Voltaire maintained his home at Cirey for the ensuing 16 years. Writing of his relationship, "She makes me happy." It was while at Cirey that Voltaire and Frederick of Prussia, then Crown Prince, began what became a lengthy correspondence and an on-again, off-again friendship. Voltaire also occupied his time writing plays and essays on history, science, the Bible, and organized religion. He also began to move about France and Europe more freely, as the passage of time lessened the fervor over his various indiscretions. During a 1744 visit to Paris, he began another affair with Marie-Louise Mignot, his niece, who was recently widowed. Voltaire never married, preferring the company of other men's wives for his mistresses. His only long-term relationships with women were with the married Marquise and his widowed niece. Nor did he father any known children, though the Marquise became pregnant in 1748 and died during childbirth in 1749. His relationships with both the Marquise and his niece may have been more platonic than sexual, according to some. Such would be in accord with what Voltaire wrote years before at the age of 25. "Friendship is 1,000 times more precious than love."
Well, that's a little bit. I can hope for that. I mean, especially if he was like being all snarky about somebody else's incest. It's like he doesn't know, like he can't go on and just do it himself after that. Like, especially considering how much he seems to hate hypocrites. Granted, the man does seem to be like, everything. He's all over the place when it comes to. It's like, I don't like Catholicism, and also Protestantism is bad, and yes for religion, but like no for like it's like he's not wrong about the religion stuff. I'm not gonna lie, like we're gonna like I'm down on organized religion, but like I don't know, like there's a lot of stuff that it seems like he is very. On one hand, he's like hates hypocrisy, but on the other hand, he seems to pick and choose very carefully the things he agrees or disagrees with.
Seems to me that I am in no degree made up for passion.
Okay, so he's ace.
I find something a bit ridiculous in love. I have made up my mind to renounce it forever. Following the death of the Marquise and a brief visit to Paris, Voltaire moved to Prussia at the invitation of Frederick, by then King of Prussia, but not yet Frederick the Great. There, while living under Frederick's protection and on his payroll, Voltaire produced Micromegas, an early work of science fiction in which extraterrestrials visit Earth and observe the foibles of the human race. In answer to a human's question comparing the natural and the supernatural, Voltaire's Alien expounds, "I say again that nature is like nature. Why bother looking for comparisons? The alien observes human reason is limited. The universe limitless. At the same time, as he had in the French court years earlier, Voltaire made enemies as easily as he amused his friends and patrons. By mid-1752, Voltaire was no longer welcome at Frederick's court, having, as he did so often throughout his long life, made powerful enemies among the nobility and influential religious leaders. Frederick banished him from the court, though the two remained correspondents.
Oh,
As he slowly journeyed
So he was saving face. Okay, because he mentioned that at the beginning, and it was like his friend banished. It was like, it was to save face, but they like maintained a friend. Okay. That makes sense.
Toward France and Paris in 1754. He learned that he was once again banned from the French capital, where his enemies accused him of spying for the Prussians. With enemies behind him and before him, he turned left, settling on an estate near Geneva. There, he published another epic poem, La Pucelle, the Maid of Orleans. In his earlier Henriade, he had made a national hero out of the relatively unknown Henry IV. In La Pucelle, he lampooned a national heroine, Joan of Arc, and her legend for the religious aspects of her story. It was banned in most of France, as well as in Geneva, due to its frequent licentiousness and near-pornographic imagery. Voltaire left Geneva and settled on an estate at Ferney, just inside France, where he lived for the rest of his life.
Okay. Finally found a place to settle down, huh? Got bored of bouncing around Europe.
In 1759, Voltaire published Candide, arguably his best known and certainly his most widely read work to date. Its hero Candide, his mentor, Dr. Pangloss, and a host of colourful characters endure calamities and misadventures in a fictional world. Voltaire used satire and parodied historical events, including the 1755 Lisbon earthquake, which killed an estimated 40 to 50,000 people. Religion, the military, establishments, war, philosophers, charlatans, and humanity itself are all targets for Voltaire's prose, dispatched with humorous contempt. Candide also contained a condemnation of slavery, one of many throughout Voltaire's canon. When the naive Candide encounters a slave in French Guiana, mutilated in an attempted escape, he gasps at, "What price we eat sugar in Europe?"
Ooh.
The enslaved victim gives the opinion that if all humanity shared common ancestry as described in the book of Genesis, then all were related and, quote, "no one could treat their relatives so horribly." Candide discovers a utopian society dubbed El Dorado, where he encounters a humanity freed of religious dogma, a paradise governed by human reason. When asked if the citizens therein prayed to a god, he received the reply, "We do not pray to him at all. We have nothing to ask of him." Yet, to Voltaire, the seemingly perfect world of El Dorado could not exist. If all were truly equal in all things, as its citizens claimed, then any discontent in one must reflect in another. The best of all possible worlds for one is not necessarily the best for all. Candide derides the then popular philosophy of optimism with its frequently repeated observation that no matter how bad a situation appears, it is for the best. Another way of repeating that it is God's will. When a man...
You know, I don't remember if it was, now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember if it was Voltaire or Rousseau that my teacher did not like. Because I'm like, Voltaire seems like a chill guy. I don't, see, now I'm second guessing myself. I gotta figure that out. I hope no one from my high school sees this and gets mad at me.
An encounter during Candide's travels ask of optimism, "What is that?" Candide replies, "It is the obstinacy of maintaining that everything is best when it is worst." Having observed that life is full of thorns, Candide arrives at the belief that all must cultivate our garden in the manner most suitable to their own existence. The book was immediately banned or censored throughout France as being blasphemous, seditious, and scandalous. It eventually came to be regarded as one of the greatest works of French literature ever written, however. He followed Candide with Dictionnaire Philosophique, Dictionary of Philosophy, a work he had begun while living in Prussia, and continued to amend and expand it for the rest of his life. The book originally consisted of 73 articles in alphabetical order, and was later expanded to 120 entries. Each is a subject of philosophical discussion, often in the form of a dialogue between characters. They range from adultery to why, and point out inconsistencies and outright hypocrisies of many of the positions of the government, religions, and philosophers over the laws of nature and the natural rights of humanity.
I like that.
It, too, was banned across France.
Good. Of course it was.
In early 1778, the aged Voltaire journeyed to Paris to attend the first staging of his play Irene. Stricken gravely ill during the midwinter journey, Voltaire wrote what should have been his epitaph. "I die adoring God, loving my friends, not hating my enemies, and detesting superstition." Then he recovered, attended Irene's performance in March, and enjoyed the acclaim and applause it generated. By the end of April, he was ill again. He died at the end of May 1778, probably of uremia. After his death, his political and religious enemies claimed that on his deathbed he had accepted baptism into the Roman Catholic Church and confessed his sins to a priest. There is no evidence that he did so, although a priest did attend him and urged him to confess. Voltaire apparently responded by waving him away, ushering "Laissez-moi mourir en paix." Let me die in peace. There is no evidence that while on his deathbed he responded to the urging of a priest to renounce Satan, and he replied, "This is no time to be making enemies."
I like that. nah, son, because I don't know what's out there, so, like, I'm not renouncing nobody. I like that. That's really funny. Good job. Okay, I think it might have been Rousseau. I think I spent this whole time thinking that it was Voltaire that my teacher did not like, but it might have been Rousseau, because he's kind of fun. I dig this guy.
This is but one of numerous quotes misattributed to Voltaire, including one which went viral on...
That's too bad. I was about to be like, that's awesome! But it's like, nah, he didn't say it. That's too bad.
Making enemies. This is but one of numerous quotes misattributed to Voltaire, including one which went viral on social media in 2022. If you want to know who controls you, look at who you are not allowed to criticize. Such misattributions play on the continued resonance of the name Voltaire. The Catholic Church denied his remains burial.
I mean, they're good quotes, though. I don't think he'd be mad about them being attributed to him.
Burial in consecrated ground in Paris, another indication of his refusal to accept conversion. His mistress, Marie-Louise, was the sister of the Abbé de Silleries in Champagne, and through his influence, Voltaire was buried at the abbey there. In 1791, as revolutionary fervor rocked France, his remains were returned to Paris and enshrined in the Pantheon after a procession attended by over 1 million people. In 1968, the first volume of the complete works of Voltaire, compiled and translated by the Voltaire Institute and Museum in Geneva, was published. In 1976, the project to compile all of Voltaire's prodigious amount of work moved to Oxford's Voltaire Foundation. In April 2022, the 205th and final volume of the series was published. According to the Voltaire Foundation, his life's writings extended to over 15 million words, covering nearly all aspects of human existence as was known during his lifetime. Based on references in known documents, up to 25,000 letters written by Voltaire have yet to be found. Thus, there may well yet be some unknown pearl of wit recorded by Voltaire that is pithy, irreverent, sarcastic, and still bitingly relevant.
Okay. All right. I think I might have gotten I really do think I got the philosopher that my teacher didn't like wrong, and I feel like an idiot for like starting out so like confident about that. But that was more interesting than I kind of expected. Like he had a much more like wild life than I had remembered. I didn't remember much about him except for the free speech thing. Like I knew that was like a main thing from him, and that's basically all I remembered about him, except for my misremembered fact. I'm now 90% certain that my teacher did not like him. I think it was Rousseau he wanted to punch in the teeth. If I discover that answer and you all want to know, just let me know and I will tell you. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to see more stuff like this, make sure you let me know in the comments below. If you want me to react to someone specific, let me know in the comments. If you want more of this particular channel, but again, a particular historical figure, I'm only going to know if you tell me. You can also join our Discord. That should be in the description box below. And, then you can, just join in with a really cool community. And then you'll also, as well as if you subscribe to the channel, always be the first to know when we upload new content. Appreciate you very much. I will see you in the next one. Until then,